Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the March 10th, 2026 meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, including the use of AI note-taking apps, please notify the chair. Seeing none, pursuant to Governor Healy's March 28, 2025 signing of Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws Chapter 30A, Section 20, until June 30th, 2027. This meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the telephone number area code 508-945-4410 with the conference ID number of 181-231-120 #, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. I'll now call the roll. Stephen Daniel is not here. Andy Young is here. John Sprague.
Here.
Barbara Madison.
Here.
John Papalardo.
Here.
Kristen Andres.
Here.
Tracy Shields. Here. What a wonderful thing. Tommy Doe.
Here.
Eric Whiteley.
Here.
That's great. That's always nice to see. All right. Okay, where everybody's here, we have a relatively brief agenda, we believe. And do we have Gloria McPherson? Looks like she may be online. Carrie?
Yeah, so Gloria McPherson will be going, the Housing and Sustainability Director. She'll be going over the articles listed on the agenda. The home rule petition for attainable housing restrictions and year-round housing occupancy restrictions, appropriation from the Attainable Housing Special Revenue Fund for Lease to Locals program, an appropriation from the Attainable Housing Special Revenue Fund for the Stepping Stones Road, and acceptance of the request from the estate of Patricia Ford, which is 63 George Ryder Road.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Should we turn it right over to Gloria?
Hi, everyone.
Sounds like it. Go ahead, Gloria.
Hi.
You're on
what was
mute,
the order
I
again?
believe.
There
you are.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. What was the first one again? Was it the home rule petition?
The home rule petition for attainable housing restrictions and year-round housing occupancy deed
Okay.
restrictions.
Perfect. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. That was one of the articles where town council made a couple of changes. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. Let me get to the part where there's edits. So it's not a huge edit, but I did want you guys to see it. So basically, if you read my staff report, which was written for the select board, Mass General Laws allows certain restrictions to be held in perpetuity, including affordable housing restrictions, watershed restrictions, conservation restrictions, historic preservation restrictions. but not attainable housing restrictions or year-round housing occupancy restrictions. So those two types of restrictions were recently adopted by the town of Chatham under seasonal communities at last town meeting. So we're allowed to do those restrictions, but right now we're not allowed to do them in perpetuity. And if you can't do a restriction in perpetuity because it's not mentioned under the pertinent statute, then there's a default time limit to the restriction of 30 years. And we want to correct that, and we want to put it out there as a possibility that the town of Chatham, if we were to do attainable housing restrictions or year-round housing occupancy restrictions, that we would in fact be able to hold those in perpetuity. And I think back about the CHOP properties and how those were 40-year deed restrictions, which I think at the time everyone probably thought 40 years, that's fabulous. But now that the 40 years is upon us, I think that there's a general consensus that it would have been nice to have those in perpetuity. And so as we move into kind of that next phase of housing where we start looking at those higher income levels, the attainable income levels from 100 to 200% AMI, I think it's going to be really important that if the town were to subsidize those types of deed restrictions or year-round housing occupancy deed restrictions, that in return for our investment, we would be able to do those restrictions in perpetuity. And that's the point of the home rule petition. You can see that town council added a section 2, and that just references a part of the statute, chapter 184, which talks about these restrictions, that talks about how affordable housing restrictions are held, which is by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, EOHLC. And he added a note that when we do attainable or year-round housing occupancy restrictions, they would not be mandated to be held by the EOHLC. And at this time, they wouldn't want them anyway. They only deal with affordable housing restrictions. But we just wanted to cover our bases with that. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Gloria. Barbara, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Gloria, if we get this passed right away, then it will cover when and if the CHOP houses come up and we do something with them, it will cover them as well?
So this is totally unrelated to the CHOP properties. The CHOP properties were affordable housing. So they had affordable housing restrictions. I suppose if we did a deed restriction program for attainable housing, we could potentially end up buying or acquiring attainable housing restrictions on the CHOP properties, in which case this would apply. We would never be doing a restriction program that would be specifically targeted at a particular neighborhood. Any deed restriction program that the town did would have to be town-wide. We might capture some CHOP properties, but it wouldn't be targeted to them.
No, I didn't mean that they'd be targeted. I just meant that if we did something to make them, to extend the affordable restriction, if they would then fall under this category and we could make it in perpetuity.
So I think that it's likely that if we were to do that, they would fall under attainable housing rather than affordable, even though they were originally affordable. The buy down for an affordable restriction would be really financially prohibitive, but the buy down for an attainable housing restriction, which this would cover, would be more reasonable.
Okay. And then just a second question, if I could,
Yeah,
please,
Barbara.
Mr. Chair. The Pat Ford house that we're going to be talking about shortly, does this have any effect at all on that, or does her will take care of saying that it will be in perpetuity and we can't abide by that?
So this wouldn't apply to that because Pat Ford's will actually requires the property to be used for affordable housing purposes. And this home rule petition is only for attainable and year-round.
Okay.
So Pat Ford's affordable property would not be covered under this, but it wouldn't have to be because affordable restrictions can be held in perpetuity.
Okay. Thanks, Gloria.
Thank you. Other questions, members of the Finance Committee? No? Doesn't look like it. Anybody in the audience? Anybody online? I don't see a waving hand. So I guess maybe I'm safe to say there's nothing more. All right. Gloria, do we want to move on to the next one?
Sure. What is next on your agenda so I can share that potentially?
That is the appropriation from the Attainable Housing Special Revenue Fund for lease to locals.
Okay, so I don't need to share that because there's actually no changes made by town council for that. So what's in your packet is the actual article that's been vetted by town council. So the town, through a home rule petition, established a special, what was it, a home rule petition? I don't know if it was or not, but we established a special revenue fund specifically for the purposes of funding attainable housing projects and programs. Attainable housing being 100% AMI up to 200% AMI. And that fund is funded through 1% of our short-term tax rental tax revenues, which is deposited quarterly into the account. And so I had gone before the select board a month or two ago to describe what we would need to establish a lease to locals program in Chatham. And it would be similar to lease to locals programs that are already being done in Provincetown, Orleans, Eastham, Chilmark, Nantucket, and a lot of places out west too, in Colorado, in Idaho, and in California. So there's a bunch of these programs around, primarily focused on tourist communities that are, hit hard where housing matters because of short-term rentals. So what this program would do is take a certain amount of subsidy, give it to the landlord in exchange for a landlord/property owner renting year-round as opposed to short-term rentals. It really is basically providing a financial incentive to convert short-term rentals to year-round rentals. And would be funded by the Attainable Housing Trust Fund, which means that anyone who would be a tenant in those properties would have to be income qualified at an attainable level, so up to 200% AMI. And this was at the request of the select board.
Okay. Question, Gloria. The financial aspect of this is kind of ambiguous at this point. Is the 312,000 actually a calculated number, or is that kind of a jump ball? Because presumably homeowners need to be given sufficient incentive to lease to local, but not too much incentive, we hope, to lease to locals. Has that been figured out?
So this was an actual number. I can actually get my staff report to the select board and send it to Carrie so she could distribute it. It had to do with the costs that were borne by the programs on the Cape and also Nantucket and Chilmark. And it includes, it's really itemized actually. It includes like a year of program administration. It includes some money, I think it's $12,000 for advertising to get the word out there. It includes the costs of the actual subsidies themselves. Like, I don't think in the first year that we're going to use the full $312,500 because I think until the word gets out, I don't think that we're going to maximize the number of properties. We did fund it up to potentially 20 properties, which is what Eastham and Orleans do. Provincetown does up to 30. Nantucket also does up to 30. I think it makes sense to limit it to 20 like our immediate neighbors do. But like I said, I don't anticipate in that first year getting all 20, but we did fund it for 20 properties just in case.
Interesting. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you. Gloria, I read the memo. What type of subsidy would a homeowner expect to receive? How do you determine the delta between fair market and what the program's willing to pay?
So the delta is not going to be real. We're not actually covering the full gap between what they can get for a short-term rental and what they can get for a year-round lease. Typically, the programs that are already in place on the Cape have caps that they can give to property owners depending on the number of bedrooms and the number of tenants. And so the maximum subsidy in East Ham and Orleans is $15,000 per year. And that would be for like a 3-bedroom with 3 tenants housed. Like a 2-bedroom would be $10,000 for 2 bedrooms and 2 tenants, and a single bedroom or a studio would get $5,000. So Chatham would have its own program and would be able to develop the parameters for that and what the payments would be. But that's basically what our neighbors are doing. And so when you think about it, I don't know that, 5,000 or 10,000 or even 15,000 would necessarily close the gap between a short-term rental and a year-round lease. But we're hoping that there are other factors that would make people want to do that, as they have in other towns. Supporting the local community is one of them, and also just perhaps less wear and tear than having people in and out every few days or every week for a short-term rental.
That's helpful. Thank you. I just note also in the memo, there appears to be an inversion of the 312, 500. Under background and analysis, it's written 132, 500.
Oh, I did not notice that, but I appreciate your catching that.
Sure.
We'll edit that before it goes to town meeting. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Barbara, you still have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Eric?
Gloria, you're talking there about, in your memo, about a program administrator, and the program administrator is an outside source, but it's not somebody that we're going to hire. What were you meaning by that? What did you have in mind?
So it's not a new staff person that we would hire, but it is an outside consultant that we would hire. So it's not, what I meant was no new staff positions are included in this ask. So we're not going to have to pay salary plus benefits or anything. So every other community on the Cape and the islands that have done this have hired an outside consultant to be the program administrator. And they look at tenant income, they certify the properties, they certify tenants based on income, and they help match tenants with landlords. And it's not something that's within the skill set of the staff that we already have in town hall. And especially when you talk about like income verifying, it's not anything that the town really wants to get involved in. Like, we don't want to collect people's W-2 forms. We don't want to have their social security numbers and all of these other things. And we don't want to have to verify our own residents and their incomes for this. So that's, I think, the reason why other towns have kind of like farmed this out to a consultant, which we intend to do also.
Okay. Thanks.
Eric?
Thank you. So you mentioned trying to convince people that are already using properties for short-term rentals to participate. What about properties that are already renting to locals and not necessarily as short-term, but would qualify for their current tenants?
So none of the other programs actually pay to subsidize people who are currently renting year-round, because they're already renting year-round. This is really with the goal of converting short-term rentals into long-term rentals. So if you're already leasing year-round, you wouldn't qualify for this.
Thank you.
Kristen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but Barbara already asked my question and got the answer. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this would become a part of our budget, and it would include the program administrator and any subsidies we had to pay out. So what are you projecting to be a number that we would be plugging into our annual budget to take care of this program?
So this, I think it would be similar to this. We'll have more information if we get this approved at town meeting and actually institute the program. But on an annual basis, I anticipate it would be a little bit less than this because this 312,000 number also includes the initial establishment of the program and the program guidelines and things like that. So that's equivalent to 1 month of the program administrator fee. So subsequent years, we would have that cost that wouldn't be included anymore. It wouldn't need to be. And we would also have maybe a better sense of how many property owners we could anticipate wanting to participate. So if we realize that it's really just 10, then we wouldn't necessarily have to appropriate enough money to subsidize 20.
So right now, we have a lot of questions still about this program. What it would it become annual? Would it become something that is an expense every year, and whether we have a program director or not?
So other communities do this every year. Sometimes like Eastham and Orleans only provide 1 year of subsidy for property owners who choose to lease year-round. Other programs like Nantucket and Provincetown do 3 years, up to 3 years of subsidy, with each year the subsidy dropping a little bit. So the first year they'd get 100%, the second year, 75%, and the third year 50%, say. So it's possible that individual property owners could do up to 2 or 3 or more years if Chatham wanted to subsidize it more. We could really develop a program to suit the needs of the community and the wants of the community. So there's that, which would make it come back every year. Or at some point, we can evaluate how it's doing. We can do a cost benefit analysis of how much it costs and how many people are housed. And you could determine to move forward or not with it. But the way the program stands right now in other communities, it's an annual ask of town meeting. But it's not necessarily for the same properties.
So you haven't come up yet with for the first year, so we could tell the town meeting what it would cost to run for the first year?
It would be $312,500.
Okay.
If we were to subsidize up to 20 properties. If there are fewer properties that choose to participate, we would not spend the full appropriation.
And that includes the program director?
It does. It does. This is like the full fee for 1 year, maximizing the number of properties.
Tracy?
Hi, thank you. So my understanding from what we read is that it wouldn't be coming out of a budget or even a capital expense. It's coming from the account that is already drawing money from the short-term rental, correct?
Correct. So there's no impact on the actual town budget. This is a fund that is, like I mentioned earlier, funded through short-term rental tax revenue, and that money is sitting there waiting to be spent on attainable housing projects and programs.
Thank you. Eric, do you still have a question?
No, I was going to make that same point. Thank you.
Okay. John?
And Gloria, trying to understand how this would function. From the memo, it sounds like a potential rentor would approach the program, get verified and pre-approved, sort of like a mortgage, and then would approach a potential landlord?
So the program administrator would do outreach in 2 different ways. They would outreach to the general public to see who wants to rent. And you're right, the renters would apply to the program through a web portal that the program administrator makes. But outreach would also be made to property owners who could potentially be interested in the program. And like tenants, they would also apply to the program through the portal. So you'd have 2 different groups applying, potential tenants, potential property owners who want to lease year-round. And that's where the program administrator starts all of their verification, verifying the property, that honestly, that it exists, that it has the number of bedrooms it says it has, things like that. They do income verification on the tenants. And then they match up the tenants and the potential landlords really based on household size. So if you have a landlord that has a property with one bedroom, it doesn't make sense for tenants with 4 people to, a household with 4 people to apply for that. So that they would put them in touch, but then the tenants apply directly to the landlord. And the landlord makes the final decision. But it is kind of like a matchmaking service in that respect.
So in order for a property to be qualified or pre-qualified for the program, it has to have demonstrated a short-term rental history?
Either short-term rental history or no rental history.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Gloria, I've got a sort of a related question. First, a very minor one. In the write-up that we received, it says the use of attainable housing funds does not impact the town's budget, as 1% of the town's short-term rental tax revenues are automatically deposited into the fund. Do you mean 1 percentage point or 1%?
My understanding is that 1% goes into the attainable housing fund, 1% goes into an account for the school district. So I think it's 1%, but Carrie would probably be able to answer that better.
And Carrie's eager to answer that.
It is 1%. 1% goes into the attainable housing special revenue fund, and then 1% goes into the Chatham Elementary School fund.
Okay, all right, no, I appreciate it, because I first read that and thought it really literally meant 1 percentage point.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. Others, Tracy, were you wagging at me? No, okay. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one final question. So what if we decide after the first year, we being the taxpayers and the administration, we don't like it? How do we change? Do we just stop? Or is there an obligation there?
There's no obligation at all. And in fact, the burden is on me so that if we do want to continue a second year, I would put forth another warrant article next year for funding for it. All of the leases that are done through Lease to Locals are for 1 year.
Okay.
So it really is a 1-year program. There's no automatic renewal. It would have to be voted on by town meeting every subsequent year.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gloria, I'm just curious how the success in these other towns, how has it been, what's the success in these other towns?
So the success has varied. So Provincetown's been very successful. I think that we have something like 50 properties in the program and like 74 people housed. So Provincetown has been really successful, but they've also been at it for a little bit longer. Eastham and Orleans actually do a joint program together. And I want to say they have, and they just started last year, I want to say they have 9 properties in the program and maybe 20 people housed, something, or 24 housed, something like that. I'm not sure of the exact numbers. A lot less than Provincetown, but a lot newer, the program.
Thank you.
So that's why I think that the first year, I don't think we're gonna maximize the 20 properties.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So Gloria, it's possible that we'll have, 10 or 20 properties and, dozens of families who are interested in it. So lots of disappointed
Potentially.
people. Well, we can only do so much.
Exactly. I mean, so that's the other side of this, because this would be an annual request. If we see that it's really successful, if we see that there's a lot of demand, if we decide to extend the subsidy for like 2 or 3 years per property, I mean, these are all things that we can make decisions on after the program's been in place for a year or 2 years.
Gloria, I have maybe a more general question. This, at least by its title, this appears to be to incentivize property owners who are currently renting out on a short-term basis to convert to longer-term and to narrow it further to locals and within certain income guidelines and so forth. But there certainly is a possibility that we could have a landlord, for instance, Eric, I mean, you asked kind of this question. They're renting to a local who would otherwise qualify, but at the time, they're being stretched to pay what the landlord considers to be a market rate. You know, are they disqualified from applying for this?
Is who disqualified?
The landlord or the tenant, presumably the tenant, but you've got to match the tenant to a landlord.
I'm not 100% sure I understand your question.
Okay.
I know that there are some towns that do rental caps as part of their program guidelines. Eastham and Orleans don't. Provincetown and Nantucket do. So it's possible that when we develop this program with whoever we select as a program administrator, we do put those kinds of parameters on it so that a maximum rent can be charged.
Well, I mean, the text says because of the funding source, there would necessarily be an income cap for tenants of up to 200%
Up to 200%.
AMI in this case. Right.
Right. So that would be true. Potential tenants would have to be income qualified.
Right. And, you know, up to 200% AMI suggests a certain rent capacity. Right?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, typically in this, from a housing perspective, in our area, kind of the lower Cape, not so much the outer Cape, market rate rents tend to fall at about maybe 110% AMI. So it might be something that the town would consider to put rental caps so that landlords didn't charge more than what they would normally charge to rent at those income levels, or not, depending on what the town wants to do. Eastham and Orleans does not do that. They don't have rental caps. And the program so far seems to be working because, like I said, the average market rate rent in this area tends to fall around 110% AMI.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions from the Finance Committee? Doesn't look like it. Anybody online? Nope. Anybody in the audience? Doesn't look like it. All right, then let's move on to the third.
Did you want us to vote on any of these?
What's that?
Are we voting on any of these today?
We are going to.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah. The last one has to do with the Ford property.
Okay, let me share my screen for that one because.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The next one is the Attainable Housing Revenue Fund for Stepping Stones.
Oh, it's stepping stones. Okay. Okay, sharing my screen for that. Can you guys all see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, so this is the same revenue source as for lease to locals. It is that attainable housing fund. It's the repository for 1% of the short-term rental tax revenue. It's a fund that is dedicated to attainable housing projects and programs, and the funding is there waiting to be used. So as you guys might know, the town put out a request for proposals for the development of the Stepping Stones Road property. We received one application from Housing Assistance Corp., informally known as HAC, and they did a total of 14 units in 7 duplex structures on the property. It was well received by the evaluation committee. They highly recommended it. The town manager, acting as chief procurement officer, went before the select board to have the select board affirm her decision to award the development rights to HAC, and the select board members did so unanimously. So now we have this, out there, and because it's a home ownership project, and because projects don't have the benefit of state and federal funding sources, this is a project that's going to have to be subsidized by the town. And the ask of $2.1 million is the ask of the developer in the proposal that they put forward. So I think I got into it in the staff report a little bit, that When we subsidize the development of affordable and attainable housing on the Stepping Stones Road property, we're going to do it proportionally. So a certain percentage is going to come from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and a certain percentage is going to come from the Attainable Housing Trust Fund. Neither one of those funds has any impact on the town budget. Both of those funds have money in there right now that are ready to be applied to this program. Affordable Housing Trust Funds can be used for the affordable component of the project, which happens to be 4 out of the 14 units. And that those funds require just a supermajority vote of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. Attainable Housing Funds will be used for 10 out of 14 units on the project. And those funds need a majority vote at town meeting. So that's what this article is for. It's not to fund the affordable component. It's only to fund the attainable component of this project. And I wanted to explain that even though the developer's total ask was 2,100, that would have been nice, 2.1 million. I wrote it in the warrant article up to 2.1 million for the attainable housing component. We may not use it all, but I think that as we go through the negotiation process with the land disposition agreement, and as HAC starts to do some of their site engineering and figuring out how they're going to connect to the sewer and pump up to it and all these things, I think that there are potentially some additional costs. And I think I mentioned if the town wants solar panels installed. The proposal didn't provide solar panels, but if we want those, that would be an additional cost. And I just want to make sure that there is a little bit of cushion in what we were asking from the Attainable Fund, so that if the town does ask for more, we don't have to have a special town meeting in the fall to get it.
Okay, Eric, please.
Oh, and actually, I wanted to make one other note on this. So the part on the screen where it says, and to authorize the town to convey or lease said property thereunder. So that was added by town council, and through a lot of confusion and everything, it actually did not get deleted in the version that you were sent. And the reason it's going to be deleted is that town meeting, when it authorized the change of use for a portion of the Monomoy Regional School District's property from school use to affordable and attainable housing, this was town meeting 2023. They actually authorized the town to convey or lease the property, and they authorized the town to do affordable restrictions on the property. So we don't need that there. So actually, this just needs to be stricken, and that was in the version that you guys had in your packet. But I just wanted to let you know that we're taking out that line because those authorizations were already granted.
Eric, please.
Thank you. So the 2.1 that comes from the trust fund makes sense. Where does the rest of the money come from? How is it funded to get to completion of the project?
So this is an ownership project. So a lot of the funding is going to come from a construction loan that's later paid off with the sale of the units. And as a town, we're a really good partner for developers. Actually, we've gotten a lot of grant funds. And in fact, we got a $175,000 seasonal communities grant specifically for the pre-development costs of this. So as they're working through their surveys and their site design and engineering, they can draw on the funds that the town received for that. There are other grant opportunities that we'll be able to potentially tap into. So that'll help, but primarily it's funded through a construction loan that's paid off with the sale of the units. Really what we're doing is we're funding the gap between the actual construction costs and what they can sell the buildings for at those affordable and attainable income levels.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I thought that might be the answer. It seems, and I haven't seen any of the math. It seems like the gap would probably be bigger than that, but
I have to say, I agree with that. Like when the proposal came in, I was actually anticipating a bigger gap. Part of the reason that I think that it makes sense to do a warrant article for 2.1 million as opposed to like parsing it all the way down, I think it was like 1.5 something, that was the proportion, if we didn't ask for that buffer.
All right, thank you. Barbara, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So chances are there won't be any return of those cushion funds. My question was, since the state has no involvement in any of the funding for the attainable portion of the property, they will have no say over who will be able to occupy it, correct? I mean, so we won't be limited to like 70% of local occupancy. We can do whatever we want with occupancy in terms of finding the buyers, the occupiers of the property, correct?
So yes, with caveats. So local preference only applies to affordable units. So we can actually, if we choose to apply a local preference following state law, with the affordable units. So 4 units we can apply local preference to. Those affordable housing deed restrictions are actually going to be held in party with the state, because they're affordable and we want those units on our subsidized housing inventory. Regarding the other units which are attainable, so there aren't the strict processes and procedures in statute for attainable housing that there are for affordable housing. That said, we tend to follow those processes so that it's fair, so that we'll conduct a lottery for these, for instance. We're not going to, handpick who's going to go into that. We should do a fair process, especially because I imagine there'll be more than, 10 families locally that want to potentially use those. And actually, as we're constructing these, if we actually have a lease to locals program, lease to locals is a great stopgap measure for people who are about to lose their housing. But if they can hold on for like another year or two, then, the development on Stepping Stones Road will be developed, up and coming. So we'll probably follow the same processes regarding the lottery. The other potential caveat is that if we apply some of the preferences that were allowed under seasonal communities, and this is something that we can work out in the LDA, which we're just starting to negotiate with the developer right now. And I can't give you any more information on that other than we're starting. But it would be possible to apply some of those preferences for either like municipal employees or artist housing to these units as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Gloria, I have a question that actually pertains to one of the earlier articles. I assume the affordable housing units are going to go out with restrictions in perpetuity. What about the attainable units?
The reason that home rule petition is on the warrant. So right now, an attainable housing restriction would default to a term of 30 years. We don't want that. We want them in perpetuity. I'm working with town council for some language within the deed restrictions that would be, in perpetuity or the longest period allowed by law, some way that we could potentially capture like a future time when these deed restrictions are allowed in perpetuity. It's all being worked out right now. I don't have any definitive answers, but yeah, that was a big concern of mine that, we have the ability to do these attainable restrictions or year-round restrictions, but they're currently limited to 30 years.
All right, thank you, Gloria. Other members of the Finance Committee? Oh, Gloria, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This all sounds very complicated. However, providing as much of attainable and affordable housing for Chatham residents is complicated, and it's not an easy job, and it's good that we get started on it and work out the kinks and see what's good and what isn't. But every time we say, well, this doesn't come from the budget, well, it does come from the taxpayer, because the taxpayer has that on top of their tax bill, they pay a percentage for these kind of projects.
I don't believe so, no.
When you're taking it out of the community preservation funds where these, where,
Oh, we haven't asked for community preservation funds for these projects. This is an ask for the Attainable Housing Fund. I mean, I suppose it's possible that the developer hack will go before the CPC and ask for Community Preservation Act funds, but currently there's no intention to do that. But I'm not saying that it might not happen, but right now that hasn't been discussed at all.
So these funds that Gloria is requesting is from the
Actually-
Attainable Housing Trust Fund, not trust fund, Special Revenue Fund.
and
That's
where
the
does
same-
that come from?
It's the 1% on the short-term rentals, the additional 1% that's put into here. It's just like the lease to locals that she was requesting the funds from. It's the same account.
Okay,
So,
Yeah.
when there's short-term, when people do a short-term rental, they pay a fee to
They
the
pay-
town, and it goes into this fund.
Yep, they pay 6%, and 4% goes to the general fund, and 1% goes to the Chatham
Okay.
Elementary School, and the other 1% goes to the Attainable Housing Trust. Special
okay, so this has nothing to do with the CPC funds?
Correct, no. Yeah.
Okay, it's got me straightened out, thank you. What a relief.
And I don't see them going for CPA funds for this anyway. And even if they did, CPA funds would only be able to be applied to the units that are 100% AMI and below. They wouldn't be able to be applied to all of it. And yeah, I mean, we have affordable housing trust funds that we've been specifically waiting to use for a project like this.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, I see your hand up. Would you like to
Yes.
come online and talk to us?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Okay.
You got my attention with the cushion. It's a pretty nice cushion. And I understand not wanting to come back to town meeting, but I think, well, I guess my question is, when you present it at town meeting, do you also disclose that there is a cushion? So people know exactly what they're voting for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not trying to hide anything. I mean, I think it's right there in the explanation, or at least in the staff report. Yeah, I'm happy to explain that more clearly at town meeting, but we also might have more of an idea by the time we get to town meeting of what kind of cushion we might need, because I'm hoping that the land disposition agreement will be negotiated by that point.
Okay, well, I think the firmer numbers that you have, I think that works much better at town meeting, and I think the voters would appreciate knowing exactly what they're voting for.
I agree.
So thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the members of the Finance Committee? Okay, I don't see any. Maybe it would be appropriate for us to vote on the 3 housing articles before we move on to the Ford donation. Does that sound all right? Before we forget it. Before I forget it. Now, Carrie, in the scorecard, let's see, we've got article numbers for some of these.
I don't believe so, not yet.
Okay, well, the scorecard has a line number, and maybe that's not an article number. All right, so we should just call it off. We got the, where the heck are we?
Do you want me to help you?
Restrictions in perpetuity for attainable. All right, that's the first article that we took a look at. I don't think we had any other questions on it. I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval to town meeting.
I'll move that.
Second.
Great, thank you. Motion made and seconded. I'll call the roll. Stephen is still not here. Okay, I'm in favor. Joanne Sprague,
Yes,
Barbara Madison,
Yes.
John Papalardo.
Yes.
Kristen Andres.
Yes.
Tracy Shields.
Yes.
Tommy Doan.
Yes.
Eric Whiteley.
Yes.
Great. That passes unanimously. All right, next is the lease to locals article. Do we have any other thoughts or questions on that? Doesn't look like it. Okay, I will entertain a motion to recommend approval to town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, good. Motion's made and seconded. I'll call the roll. Andy Young is in favor. Joanne Sprague.
Yes.
Barbara Madison.
Yes.
John Papalardo.
Yes.
Kristen Andres.
Yes.
Tracy Shields.
Yes.
Tommy Doan.
Yes.
Eric Whiteley.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Then the last housing article we just took up was the Stepping Stones Road. And go ahead, Barbara.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. To Nicole's point, Gloria, do we have a timeline on this? Because if we went to town meeting with a lower amount without the cushion, wouldn't we have plenty of time to ask for the cushion of the following normally scheduled town meeting? Or will they be putting all of these up within a year?
So shovels will be in the ground in a year. So I suppose that, I don't want to say that we definitely have time, but I also don't want to say that we definitely don't have time. I think it makes sense to do it up front so HAC knows what they're dealing with and can move forward without waiting for a town meeting vote potentially in the future. The buffer that I'm asking for is something like $500,000. It's not a huge buffer.
Okay.
All right. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Good. Okay. Will those in favor speak up when I call the roll? Stephen Daniels still not here. Oh, well. I'm in favor. Joanne Sprague.
Yes.
Barbara Madison.
Yes.
John Papalardo.
Yes.
Kristen Andres.
Yes.
Tracy Shields.
Yes.
Tommy Doan.
Yes.
And Eric Whiteley.
Yes.
Okay, once again, 8-0. All right, the last one is the article having to do with the estate of Pat Ford.
Yes. Okay. So this is perhaps the most complicated one of all. And I put it up I'm sharing my screen. I'm assuming you guys can see it. Quick change from town council. You may recognize the language that was added. It's exactly the same language that was removed from the Stepping Stones Road article. So we actually do need to authorize the select board to further dispose of the property if they want to develop it for affordable housing or sell it. So that language was added to this beyond what is in your packet. So I think that's the only change. So, all right, let's talk about the disposition or the acceptance of Pat Ford's property. So Pat Ford passed in 2023, May of 2023. Actually, I think it was April of 2023. So Pat Ford passed in 2023. It took a full year for the will to be adjudicated in probate court and a representative appointed. Then it took another year for the heirs to clean the house, remove personal items and things like that. And so here we are after a couple of years, ready to put the acceptance of this property on the town meeting warrant. So Pat Ford's will expressly stated that she wanted this property to be used for affordable housing purposes as determined by the select board. So however the select board deems it to be used by the town for such affordable housing purposes. There's also no limitation to the structures and improvements on the site, so they can be renovated, rebuilt, torn down. There's no restrictions with regard to that. So we have Pat's property, including a house with an underground garage and everything associated with the property to be used for affordable housing purposes. One of the big questions that we asked town council is, what does that mean? Like, what are affordable housing purposes? Like, what would constitute an affordable housing purpose? So the obvious answer is, build a house or renovate the house and deed restrict it for affordable housing. The other option that town council laid out was that the select board could choose to sell the property and put the proceeds in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which has a purpose of use for affordable housing only. So that would also sort of satisfy the terms of the lease, or the terms of the will, sorry. And then there's the question of, well, do we keep it or do we sell it? The town could potentially keep it and use it for rental housing. The town could sell it to a developer or sell it to someone who would develop affordable housing on it. So we had all of these questions that had to be hashed out by town council. And I think we have a pretty clear, 3 options of what the town could potentially do with the property. But ultimately, that would be the decision of the select board. So the other 2 complicating factors in this is that the property is subject to a mass health claim, which would have to be taken care of. And the property is also subject to a tax lien, back taxes, and current taxes, which would also have to be taken care of. Neither of those would impact the town budget. So anytime we would have to take care of the mass health lien or take care of the tax lien, it could be done through the purchase of the property and any proceeds that we get, whether that's to a developer or if there's an ownership house built on it to the purchaser of the house. All that can be taken care of. If the town were to retain the property and use it potentially as rental housing, we would have to deal with the tax lien ourselves. I'm not exactly sure how we would do that. Carrie could probably shed a lot more light on that. I know we'd have to go through the new tax processes and procedures. And then the mass health claim would also have to be retired. And if we were to retain the property for rental purposes, that mass health lien could be retired through the use of affordable housing trust funds. So there's actually no financial ask that comes with this warrant article, even though we have those 2 liens on the property right now.
Okay, members of the Finance Committee. Eric?
Have we done an analysis on what the value of the land is on the property? I think that the structure there is probably doesn't have a lot of value, but the land itself in one of the scenarios for the sale of the property, just to kind of give a baseline.
We have not had an appraisal done at this point.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Gloria, it's affordable housing is technically affordable housing. This could not be used as attainable housing?
Correct. But with seasonal communities, I think I wrote it in the first, maybe the first option. Oh, maybe it was in my staff report rather than that. So if the town were to retain it, it would still have to be affordable housing, but we could potentially allow, municipal employees to rent it under our allowances through seasonal communities. So we could potentially layer on how we treat this property.
Okay, and if this should be approved by town meeting, how quickly, and we're planning to keep the property, or whether we are or not, how quickly could we make the payment to the state, assuming that interest and penalties are accruing at, some ungodly number, and they have not been willing to show us any slack here?
So I would say that if town meeting accepted this, the select board should probably have a meeting relatively quickly about what they wanted to do with the property. And then I think that we would probably go before the Affordable Housing Trust and ask them to retire the mass health claim as soon as possible. Yes, because of the interest accruing.
Thanks.
Okay. Other members of the Finance Committee? Please, Eric, go ahead.
Question, it's maybe a little bit outside of this specific, but brought in by it. So the option C that you've offered, selling the property with no deed restriction with the proceeds going to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, it's great that that's an option on the table. I think there's some real value to that. Is that something that can be considered for other properties? I think of I don't know, we're probably maybe too far along on Old Harbor and things like that. I mean, is that something that was considered at all in any of those other locations?
Do you know what? I really don't know if that was considered for 127 Old Harbor Road. I would really want town council to weigh in on whether it's an option for that property. It's possible that the restrictions in that bequest are different and would make it different. But, you know, if the stars align, I guess it's possible that we could do that. I mean, that's a really great question. It would really bring us some flexibility.
Yeah, well, I don't think that anyone's worried about the deed restrictions there. They've pretty much submarined that whole concept of the deed restrictions there. They have nothing to do with what people are moving forward with, so, but thank you for your answer, I understand.
Barbara?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Gloria, this is probably way outside your parameters also, but if someone decides that they would like to leave a piece of property to the town for this reason, do they have to assume that their entire will is going to be published to these agendas?
I don't know the answer to that, but we did attach the will to the select board staff report.
All right. Okay. All right. Just for the record, this is apparently a 10,800 square foot lot with a 1,500 square foot house. Total assessed value currently is $555,000, split roughly evenly between the house and the land.
Those numbers, Andy, I'm sorry. No.
The exact number of current assessment is $555,000, land 297, building 257. So not inconsiderable, but I'm guessing that your guess on the house is probably about right. Built in 1924, at least on this, it's been depreciated 48%. Okay, other questions? No, doesn't look like it. Do we think that we should be recommending that this, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. Come on up.
Brian Phillips, 374 Orleans Road. I just kind of have some questions about the will. Mr. Whiteley said that the town council has kind of deemed that after 30 years, the town can do whatever they want with the property and don't have to honor the wills of these people leaving these properties unless the will is in a trust. Is that correct? Or it was something along those lines?
I haven't heard that.
I'm not sure if you're asking me. I just know the Old Harbor process, yeah.
Well, I guess my question, town council has deemed that, wills only have to be honored for 30 years, which I disagree with. But if it's a part of a trust, it's then permanent.
Brian, that's a legal question that's way beyond my knowledge.
I guess I just was wondering if this was a part of the trust and it would be permanent.
The will itself does not state that this is in a trust.
Okay.
All right, so I'm kind of reluctant to guesstimate what might happen. But, if we accept this, presumably, if we hold it, we could put whatever restriction on it we wanted. So that's at least, if it's affordable housing, that's at least 30 years, right, as it's written. Or if we get that special state legislation passed, it could be in perpetuity for affordable housing. Go ahead, Tracy.
The affordable already has the perpetuity option. It's only attainable that we're asking for more than the 30.
Yeah, but
And this property's affordable.
I agree. I just don't know whether the language of the will is specific enough to make that, to cross that hurdle. But never mind, because if we do accept it, then we can put on it whatever restrictions presumably we care to.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian. I don't know what the right answer to this property is, but seems to me we should urge town meeting to go ahead and accept it. and some of the details are going to have to be worked out in the wash. Any other questions?
I mean, it's clearly worth more than whatever is owed, so I don't see how it would be negative to accept the property, right?
Correct. Right. I'm agreeing with that. Oh, good. You're agreeing with me. Either way works. All right, cool. Do we want to make a motion on this? I'll
So
entertain
moved.
one. All right, Tommy moved it.
Second,
Good, there's a second. Regrettably, Stephen still couldn't join us. Chair votes aye. Joanne Sprague,
Yes.
and Barbara Madison.
yes.
John Papalardo,
Yes.
Kristen Andres.
Yes.
Tracy Shields.
Yes.
Tommy Doan,
Yes.
Eric Whiteley.
Yes.
Okay, good. So again, 8-0. I know, Gloria, you cleaned it up.
All
You-
good
you
news, so
cleaned the
thank you very
bases.
much.
All right, that's good. All right, thank you so much. Carrie,
Thank you, Gloria. I don't have anything else for today. That's it. That's all on the whole agenda.
okay, now, everyone should have received a notice that the meeting that was originally scheduled for March 12th has now been canceled. Another holiday, my,
We're going to move the couple items, instead of having a whole meeting, to the 17th.
okay, so
And-
Tuesday, the 17th of March, St. Patrick's Day. I assume we'll have a green agenda. Look at that, okay, good. All right, 1:30.
So we'll have a full
Oh,
agenda.
look, that's right. Joanne, you're ahead of yourself here. You should have worn that sweater. Oh, look, You gotta hold your fire until next week. All right, cool. We don't have anything else to take up, then, is there an interest in adjourning?
So moved.
That's good. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Great. Those in favor, chair votes aye. Joanne?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Tommy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. I think things went along just fine.